And with me now from Frankfurt, Germany, to continue our conversation is retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, a former commanding general of the U.S. Army in Europe and now Pershing Chair in Strategic Studies at the Center for European Policy and Analysis. General, it's a pleasure to see you. I understand that you were in Kyiv just last week. You had an opportunity to meet with President Zelensky. What's your assessment of the situation there?
Well, Jose, thank you very much. And by the way, I'm also a fellow Floridian. So good to work with you right now.
Likewise.
I've been to that tank factory in Kharkiv where Matt was just reporting, and it's an amazing place, what they're doing there. But his assessment, I think, is accurate. And when I spoke to President Zelensky last week in Kyiv, he made it clear to me that he fully understands the threat. He understands that the existence, the survival of his government, as well as the survival of the sovereignty of Ukraine, is at stake because of the danger put in place by Russia. But he also is having to balance his economy. I mean, they're bleeding money right now, which I think is part of the intention of the Kremlin. And so they're trying to find a balance on preparation, but also economy. And I tend to agree that there will be an attack by the Russian Federation forces, but it is going to be a much lower level, almost a continuation of what they've been doing, not the large, massive assault. And for sure, the Russians would not be able to overrun Kyiv in 72 hours.
Yeah, that would be so difficult. I mean, the might of the Russian armed forces, and especially the 30,000 troops that they've put in those different border areas, it would be massive. Although, you know, let's remember the Soviet Union had an issue with Finland, and they thought they were going to be able to take Finland. And look what happened. Finland was able to fight back. Meanwhile, the White House has been pushing the message that the U.S. and its NATO and European allies are united when it comes to dealing with the Russian threat. The president sought to project that yesterday when he met with the Chancellor of Germany. What are, from the European side, what's the view of how the United States and the allies are dealing with this? Is everybody on the same page?
Well, look, I was actually very impressed with the diplomatic effort by the Biden administration, the most comprehensive and intensive diplomatic effort I've seen by any administration probably since 1995 in the Dayton Peace Accord. So we are probably closer to each other in most of the parts that really matter. The differences are on what should the responses be. I would say this. I was impressed with Chancellor Scholz yesterday. I had the chance to meet him in Hamburg a few years ago when he was the Bürgermeister of Hamburg. And of course, he's moved up through the ranks of the SPD, which is a complicated party in the German political scene. He has a challenge from his left flank, just the way President Biden does also. But yet he repeated over and over and over yesterday that he is in step with the United States. And so I'm actually quite confident that Germany, in the end, is going to apply the diplomatic and economic pressure on the Kremlin that's needed to make the Kremlin hesitate.
Retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, it's a pleasure to see you. I thank you so much for being with me this morning.
Thanks for the privilege.